Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Yes, this is a new set. If you're a regular viewer to the channel, the brick wall is not what's going on in this video. The brick wall is still here to stay. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it's right there. Check the pinned comment at the bottom of this video. Just some tips and ideas I'm looking for on a new set to make the videos even more enjoyable from a viewing experience. All right, let's get into the video. Palantir has finally responded. They have finally responded. This was like, you know when you subtweet someone, like you're thinking of saying something to someone, but you don't want to explicitly at them, right? Because you don't want to be as explicit. If Palantir and their communications was like on Elon Musk type of level of I don't care anymore, they would have added Mr. Ross Gerber, because they literally just introduced a new Twitter account that is based upon privacy and ethics so they can communicate to the world their mission around privacy and ethics. And they just released a new blog post that oh so subtly and not subtly basically calls out all of the claims that Ross Gerber made against them. And we're going to get into it in this video. Now, before we get into the article, it's really important to understand that, look, Palantir has a problem with communication. And the reason they have a problem with communication is because for 17 years, they have been such a secretive company. For those who don't know about the company, I was literally talking to my friend the other day, and he said, I was asking him about stocks, and he was like, yeah, I have a couple of shares of Palantir. And I was like, oh, I have a lot of shares of Palantir. He was like, how many? I was like, I have a lot. And basically, he was like, aren't they just like a company that helps like the government spy on you? And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, he's a regular person that knows somewhat about stocks, but he's not really educated about like what Palantir does. And I couldn't blame him for saying that, because I was like, that's kind of the narrative around Palantir. Like when most people think about Palantir and they're not really invested in the due diligence that someone who's made 150 videos on them has done, then of course they're going to have that narrative. Ultimately, for Palantir to win at the highest of levels, we're talking about 3, 4, 5x the stock price from here. I don't think it's just going to be a question of revenue growth and adjusted operating margins. I think it's really going to be a question of, can they get sentiment to change around the culture around their company? And when you have people like Ross Gerber spewing the propaganda that they do, and I like Ross, he's not a bad person. It's just on Palantir, I do think he's a bit ignorant. When you have him spewing this type of stuff, comparing them to the Nazi party, like that type of stuff taints a company, whether or not it's true. Like, it's definitely not true, but the perception of how it is communicated by influential people like Ross spreads, and the narrative spreads. And I'm on Twitter all day, and people are tweeting me these ridiculous narratives around Palantir, and it's just like, I can't even get into like an argument with you on Twitter, because it's like the amount of information you need to understand to change that narrative is a lot if you're going deep into Palantir, if you already have the preconception that it's a company that helps the CIA spy on you. So Palantir has to do some internal marketing. They need to get better at communicating their message to the world, which is that they're actually the total opposite of every one of those companies that is selling your data and just making money off advertising or selling it to, different third-party vendors. Like, they're the ones that don't do that. And the world doesn't know that yet. So hopefully this blog post is a good start. All right, so let's go through it. Protecting privacy and upholding liberal democratic values have been central to Palantir's identity and mission since our founding in 2003. And we have intentionally adopted a business model that allows us to follow through with the commitment. We make software that enables the institutions that serve our societies to use their data responsibly and effectively, and we do not trade in personal data at all. Notice how we do not trade personal data at all is underlined. This is calling out Ross Gerber. This is explicitly saying what Ross said, which is that they get your data and sell to the highest bidder. They are saying, no, we don't do that. And since 2003, that has been the entire mission. Many of the most important institutions in the world rely on Palantir software to support critical and sensitive operations. These organizations have exceptionally high security and data protection standards for reasons ranging from protecting national security to complying with the world's most stringent privacy laws, and they would not trust their software if it did not meet and exceed these standards. This is also a really good point. I actually did a reaction video to Meet Kevin back in November when Meet Kevin was talking about Palantir, and his biggest argument was that companies don't want to trust Palantir with the data, which is why he doesn't see potential in Palantir, because companies are not going to give up like their sensitive data to them. And my whole argument was like, are you kidding me? Like, they've been working with 17 years with the highest level agencies. Forget companies. They've been working with governments that have citizen data, and they haven't ever had a data breach, right? This is not like Cambridge Analytica Facebook stuff. So the narrative that data and privacy is a concern for Palantir doesn't exist. And that's part of their moat, right? The fact that they can get away with that because they're so big on civil liberties and security is a big idea. Achieving such a strong security record and empowering institutions to protect people's data in the process was necessary for our business to succeed. For example, our earliest customers in national security required very fine-grained control over who could see what data, granting permissions only on a precise need-to-know basis. This functionally can equally enhance privacy when applied to other domains. So the argument that they're making here is like, look, our security record has empowered institutions for a pretty long time, and our national security interests or national security clients, the government, required us and our technology to get better at privacy and security. So, I mean, their argument is like literally we wouldn't be in business if we didn't keep getting better at learning how to protect user data or just any type of sensitive data. And it can be applied to every other vertical that exists in the world in terms of all the markets that they're targeting when it comes to protecting data. We realized early on that effectively creating privacy protective technology and business practices required a dedicated focus, a significant investment, and a broad mandate. And broad mandate is the big part there. They had to believe as a company that they could do that. This is why Palantir created one of the world's first privacy and civil liberties engineering (PCL) teams more than a decade ago, which continues to be an essential part of the company's identity and work. So I actually didn't know they created a privacy and civil liberties engineering team. That's very interesting. So that means the engineers that worked on Palantir, I would assume, had privacy embedded in terms of how they coded the product, making sure that user data or any type of sensitive data was at the core focus. Now, I want to talk quickly about when they made a broad mandate. It's very important to understand when a company has a mandate. So when a new president is elected into Congress and they control the House and the Senate, it is referred to as, at least in the United States, it is referred to as them having a mandate over the country. So, for example, when Biden got elected and he had they had the House of Representatives majority Democratic, and he had the Senate only 50-50, but Kamala Harris, because she's the vice president, she's a Democrat, she can break the 50 tie, so it can be 51-50. He was not known to have a massive mandate over his agenda because the country did not vote to give the Democrats a huge majority. They voted to give the House a little bit of a majority. But if the Senate also had that majority, then you could assume that Biden had a mandate. Why did he have a mandate? Because the majority of the country, from a House of Representatives perspective, a Senate perspective, and then from a White House perspective, all agree that all three branches of government must be going one party, right? Whether that's Democrat or Republican. In this case, it would have been Democrat in 2020. That didn't happen. In the Senate, he had a very slim majority. He didn't have the mandate. Barack Obama in 2008 had a mandate. He had a majority Senate, majority House. He had the White House. That's why he was able to get the Affordable Care Act passed in 2010. It took 2 years of negotiating to get that passed, and ultimately they got it done. Now, a mandate is important because if you have a mandate, that means your agenda can get passed. And the beautiful thing about having a mandate is that no matter how wild your agenda is, you can always look back on the fact that, hey, they wanted this to happen. The voters voted for us to have full control over all parts of the government. Therefore, we should be able to pass the policies, and we should be able to pass them in the most unilateral way to some extent. We can have a little negotiation with the other side, but at the end of the day, we have leverage because we have the majority. So either they're going to join us or they're not going to join us, but we're going to get our policies passed. A mandate is incredibly important when it comes to any governing institution or any powerful institution that is trying to impose their agenda. Google has a mandate called "Don't Be Evil." And this came up, and the slogan, and this is sort of the mainstay slogan that came around 2003 when they realized, oh, we are actually controlling the entire world's information. Like, how do you get information? You go through Google, which means if the functional methodology by which the entire world gets information is through Google, then Google has a mandate to not be evil. Because if they are evil, they can manipulate how the world gets their information in a variety of different ways and do net harm to the world. So when you're going through that entire company, a lot of the ethos is, hey, we should not be evil. We are. Our entire ethos is let's not do bad things. Now, obviously, have they done bad things? Sure. But that's the mantra. That's the ethos, that's the culture that they're trying to set in the company. So when Palantir says we have made a broad mandate around privacy protective technology, the reason I talked about what a mandate means is because a mandate is a very significant word in my opinion. A mandate means from leadership down, it is a dictatorial process that is embedded within every person that gets into Palantir that user privacy around data, and civil liberties is the focus of this company. This is not a company that is trying to figure out how to get you to get more clicks. This is not a company that is trying to figure out how to get you to get more screen time on your phone, which is most of the Silicon Valley companies, and some of those are great companies, but most of the Silicon Valley companies are optimizing for that. That's just technology. Most of the business models of technology are rooted in advertising, at least social network type of technologies, which are some of the biggest companies in the world. Palantir left Silicon Valley because they wanted to get away from that culture. So a broad mandate they're trying to communicate in this article is that the ethos, culture, and fabric of this company is rooted in privacy. And it is only until they effectively communicate that mandate, it is only when Google effectively communicated that they are not trying to be evil, they are trying to do a net good for the world, that they are able to then grow because the entire public gets on their side. And Palantir doesn't even have a consumer product yet. So it's already hard enough for most people to understand what the hell they do from a B2B enterprise perspective, because B2B enterprise is already boring to most people. So now they've got to fight off this thing that, yeah, we don't like kill people with data, we don't try to target people. A broad mandate is a really good sign that they're pushing that, and now we need more content from them actually proving that they live up to this broad mandate. Further, they say rejecting unacceptable trade-offs. Poorly conceived technologies present false trade-offs. One argument that we have long rejected is that national security requires sacrificing citizens' privacy and civil liberties. Our experience has been that through the thoughtful and principled development of technology to support institutions, we can harmoniously advance these and other rights. It is essential, for example, to treat fairness as a first-order concern when designing systems to support decision-making. What they're saying there is like, hey, just because we keep people, just because we have protect user data and like work with big companies doesn't mean we have to trade off with civil liberties. And that's another point Mr. Ross Gerber misses. And you know, I did a whole interview breakdown of Alex Karp back in 2009 when he was talking about a technology protecting civil liberties. I'll leave that in the description. They built this with the intent to make sure that they didn't have a tyrannical control over the data and that the government also didn't have tyrannical control over the data, which is why the technology is actually able to protect civil liberties. Ultimately, Palantir's work is unjustifiable if it does not strengthen privacy and uphold liberal democratic values. Citizens would rightly oppose it, and we would be undermining the very societies and convictions that we seek to defend. Thus, a motivating question for every engineer in the company is, do I want to live in the kind of world that the technology we're building would enable? I'll leave the rest of the article in the description, then they just talk about what the function is of that team. This article is a really, really good step. And really this question, do I want to live in the kind of world that the technology we're building would enable, is their mantra of Google's idea of don't be evil, right? So they're like, look, we're building some really serious tech. This technology can really affect the world in a positive way. And this technology could also really negatively affect the world if we don't have the pristine focus around civil liberties and we don't have the pristine focus around privacy, around confidential data. And the beautiful thing I like about this article is that they're making a moral case for privacy and data and society and how culture operates, but they're also making a really strong business argument. Like embedded in this article is an explicit, are you stupid? How would our company be the company that it is? How would we be publicly traded? How would we be a $20, $30 billion market cap company if we didn't focus on protecting the data that we're helping our clients learn and analyze? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And the problem is that's obvious when you know about the company, but most people don't know about the company. And that's a communication problem. And they've got to get this communication game up. They've got to do more than just one article. They really got to get this message out there. And I believe that if they can get this message out there, then there is a much broader chance to get consumer buy-in from a lot of other people. Because the institutions, I think, kind of recognize this. Some institutions don't yet, but most institutions understand what Palantir does. But when you have people like Ross Gerber that are pretty influential, that manage a lot of money from some of those institutions, that's when these narratives can get really disheartening to see. So overall, Palantir fights back. They are not taking no for an answer. They have a mission. They're going to defend that mission. They're going to try to communicate that out to the world, and they're going to try to stop the FUD around Palantir. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Looking forward to reading them. My name is Mitt. I'll see you in the next one.